Hello, and welcome to the Music Survival Guide, the independent musician's guide on how to survive in the music industry. My name is Phil, a mixing and mastering engineer. Hope you're all doing wonderfully well. We are very much in the end of the year, the kind of latter bit of the year anyway, so not quite the end of the year. And yeah, I'm loving it because I love the cold and I love it when it gets kind of a bit, I was going to say dingy, when it gets dark early and it's kind of, you get cool kind of snuggly inside. It's my perfect time of year, to be honest with you. But there we are. Never really a summer person. Anyway, this week I'm chatting with Natasha, who's an events manager at a pub called the Fighting Cocks based in Kingston on the outskirts of London. And it is possibly my favourite gig venue. I don't really know why, it just sort of is. I think it's the culture of the place. If you've been there, you'll know what I mean. It's just a really cool place to go see gigs. And we chat about all sorts of things around the local music scene. So we talk about building a strong local music scene, the approach to finding good support bands that they take, and of course, why confetti might be a bad idea for your next gig. Enjoy! Today on the podcast, I am joined by Natasha, who is an events manager. Is that the right phrase? For the Fighting Cocks? Wonderful. Natasha, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. How's it going?
All right. Yeah. I've just been on holiday and I'm kind of been thrown back into the working week and I'm a bit discombobulated. That's the word.
And it's Halloween, so you get the fun of Halloween.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. So my first question, as always, is from an online random question generator.
Cool.
And this is the most specific kind of question I've heard from these because they're usually quite vague. So, in your opinion, is it better to read books in electronic form or to actually hold the book?
Ooh, hold the book.
Oh, why?
You can't smell it if it's electronic, can you?
Are you a big fan of a bookshop and that kind of thing?
I'm not just going around smelling books. I'm not going to lie to you, but I don't know. I think personally, you get more. I mean, as you can see behind me, we have many, many, many books all over my bookshelf, so I'm definitely biased. But yeah, in the same way, I think. Yeah, with music, like if you go and you buy a CD, you go and buy a record, you can like physically hold it in your hands. You can have it. I think that's better with books.
The physical experience, I guess, in that regard, yeah. And to be fair, an old bookshop smell is pretty good.
Smells fantastic.
And I don't really know what the smell is. It just sort of is. Anyway.
Which is like if you watch Black Books and just walk in and just get like that's like that vision, just Dylan Moran sat there with a glass of wine, having a great time.
I've not thought about Black Books for years. Wow, what a show. So, to kind of move the conversation onto, I don't know, I was going to say more professional grounds. That's not really what I mean. I'm going to say maybe more relevant grounds than books. How did you get into this crazy world in the first place? What was your route into
music-wise? Yeah. I mean, how far back do you want to go? When I was a kid, I'm from Wales originally. I'm from Cardiff, and we used to go to a rock night called Smells Like Teen Spirit, and it was very cool. We saw a funeral for a friend there, and there was like 17 people in the room. But yeah, and we basically would go, we'd watch like local bands every week, and it was awesome. It was just like a thing that we did. And then, the years passed and we got older, and sadly it got closed down and turned into flats. So the venue went, then we just started doing more bits of shows and working in other places. And so the Fighting Cocks, we work really closely with Music Venues Trust, and they do a lot of work with keeping venues alive and keeping them going. I just want to be a part of that, really. And I used to work at the Fighting Cocks as a bartender.
Sure. So you got in through bar work and then went, oh, I like this. Let's stay.
Just constantly being on the venue bar, but this is amazing.
That's fair. So, as a venue, what's your approach to booking bands? Do you work kind of only through promoters? Do you work with bands directly? Is it a blend?
Yes, so it's a blend.
Sure.
So you have a bunch of promoters that come in and they'll do shows. Banker Records, they put on a lot of massive bands, which is incredible. We love having them in. And then we put on a lot of house shows as well. So one of the things that we've always done, or we've started to try and do more in recent years, like post-COVID, is we're trying to work with a lot of bands directly, because there's a lot of there was a bit of a period of time where there just kind of weren't local bands post-COVID. And then some people started coming out of the woodwork, and now we're getting a bit of like a healthier batch, which is so awesome to see. And it's kind of happening a bit of a scene revival. So showing those newer bands who maybe haven't really done many shows before and definitely haven't put on their own shows before, kind of showing them how to do it and kind of piecing everything together a little bit. But we're very focused on kind of a community aspect in the venue. So we want to bring everyone together as much as possible. So we'll do a blend of all those things, but also we'll have bands that contact us, and we have a band directory which we've put together, which is basically massive spreadsheet, which is everyone on it. And so then when we're making a lineup, we'll pair everyone together from that.
Sure. So I guess the way in, I guess, if you're a band listening to this and you think, the Fighting Cocks is a venue I would like to play, is to get onto the spreadsheet.
Get onto the spreadsheet. But also when you send an email saying my band would like to play, like put a link to the band. That the amount of, the amount of bands that they've started being better about it in more recent months, but we were going through a while where it was quite simply a sentence, can I play your gig? And I was like, maybe, I don't know. What's the name of the band? That would be a good start. But yeah, send in the music. We do actively try and listen to every single person who applies, which, we'll get a lot of applicants.
The thing that I remember, I chatted a couple of years ago to Matt, who's the kind of booking person at the Black Heart in Camden. And the thing he said is if bands are contacting, you've got to make listening to the music as easy as possible.
That's
just
exactly
because of the
it.
sheer volume of emails that come in.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's an important tip. Make sure it's clickable and easily findable.
If I have to go and search for something, the chances are I'm also doing 5 other things, and that is just going to get forgotten about. Whereas if it's in front of me, then I will actively take the time to listen and pay attention.
Yeah. So you mentioned that part of, I'm going to say the mission. Maybe that's too dramatic a phrase. The mission.
I like it. I like the mission.
Let's go with the mission.
The mission.
Is to help bands in the kind of grassroots, kind of local scene get gigs and get started. So if a band approached you and said, we haven't done many gigs, but we'd love to be considered. Here's a link to some of our music, or here's a kind of demo thing that we've done. What does that conversation look like? Do you talk them through kind of how to prepare for a gig, or what's your approach to that kind of side of things?
Not so much how to prepare for a gig in terms of being a band, but in terms of how to put on a gig. Essentially, we lay it all out. So we basically kind of say, this is all the information we need. And it's literally a form. So just kind of fill in all the things, and it's sectioned off into kind of what we need for promotion and, what we need just for the office and what we need for the sound engineer. But it's a very simple way of doing things that, if you start doing that X, Y, Z and get used to doing things in that format, then if you go on to do a show pretty much at any other venue, you're going to have a basic knowledge of how to put something on. So it's kind of, it's one of those situations where it's kind of, you want to give someone the reins, but you want to stand close enough by them that if it all starts going wrong, you can quite literally run in and be like, right, that's fine. This is how we're going to fix it. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And normally by the second or third show, they're smashing it and they know what they're doing. And at that point, they can be considered promoters. And then if they want to just do outright venue hires and do things themselves, they can. But it's one of those things where if I think there was a gap for it, not specifically in Kingston, but in general post-COVID, where there was just a lot of people that they just didn't really know how to do things, but they also didn't necessarily have the money to invest in doing venue hires if they didn't know how it was going to go. Like, it's quite difficult to predict these days how a show will turn out. And this just kind of bridges that gap, basically. It makes it a bit safer for them.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, the thing that I've noticed, because I do go to, not as many as I'd like as a parent, but I do go to a fair few gigs at the Fighting Cocks, and I go to a fair few in the kind of Camden area as well, because obviously it's Camden. And the thing I noticed, especially in Camden, is the kind of crowd that you get is so dependent on the night of the week. But then London is just this weird sort of place where even on a Friday night, you're not guaranteed a good audience. And yet, every time, certainly I've been to the Fighting Cocks, it's been busy for gigs, which I don't know, is there some secret sauce that you have as a venue? Or
I think it's a case of just kind of mixing everything together. Like, there are so many people who love that place, and there is so much variety that goes on there. So it's kind of, you might have like a metal night one night or a punk night the other night, but then you're going to have other things. So one of our promoters, Jodie, she's awesome. She runs a night called Rockyoke, and so she'll be up there. So it's karaoke, but rock songs. But it's a very good like community vibe, and it brings everyone together. And like you said about, you're not going to as many gigs now because you're a parent. We've got a quarterly night which is called Youth Anthems, which is an all ages matinee, and some of the bands now are also kids, and they'll kind of come up and do like their first little song, which is great. But, we'll have these lineups as well. So it's something that the parents who used to go to the Cox and used to be our regulars, a lot of them started having kids and stopped coming down. So yeah, this night kind of came about because of that. So they can still kind of come down and have fun, but bring their kids and, get the next generation of battle jackets on the go.
Solid plan to me. So you said that you've got your mega spreadsheet of doom with all the bands that you kind of, your kind of roster of bands. How do you go about finding kind of appropriate support bands to make up a bill? I'm guessing the spreadsheet is a big part of it.
So I would say the spreadsheet of doom, that's more the support bands. So generally speaking, you get some headliners through that as well. I'd say most headliners come through agencies. But then you'll also have some headliners who, they book their own shows. I think most bands get to a certain point that they would rather an agency sort it out, particularly when then it comes to like tours and things like that. It's a lot of admin, and if you've got someone else that can do that for you, excellent days. And then the support bands will normally be other people that have contacted us, and then we'll put it all together.
I guess you kind of, to kind of paint a situation. So you've got I don't know, let's say they're a modern metal band who they are your headlining band. Does your spreadsheet go, this is the broad genre of every band, and then you kind of just think about it like that?
I think we're putting too much effort on the spreadsheet. It's literally a Google Doc to become. So it's that. So basically what we've started doing is we've started building out a band directory so that we effectively will have a roster of bands. So basically in the last year or so, everything has grown quite a lot. We've gone from having 1 or 2 events a week to having like 5 or 6. But we're still an independent venue. We're a very small team. So what we're effectively trying to do is make things easier. So say one of these new bands, promoter types, people that we're building up comes along and says, I want to put on a show. I need, 5 bands that are going to match this vibe. We can essentially say, right, cool, here's the band directory. These are all people who are happy to be contacted. These are, where they're all kind of located. This is their subgenre that they are in. These are bands that they sound like. This is their music. These are their videos. And you can have all that information just ready to go in the same way that you would if you were to approach an agency.
Solid. That sounds like a really good approach, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we do a lot of admin.
Yeah. Hey, if it all makes everything work smoother, then what more can you ask for?
Yes, this is true.
So let's say a band has been booked for a support slot. They're on the spreadsheet. They've been picked, and they're good to go. So what kind of time would you expect a band to turn up generally for your venue? What's your approach to that kind of thing?
Loading. So we always have loading at 5 p.m. It's really it's very cut and dry, I think, with us. Like, we basically do 5 o'clock loading, 7:30 doors, and then it's normally a 3-band bill, and we'll do 8 p.m. For the first one, 8:45 or 8:50 for the second, and then 9:45 for the third. But obviously that's adjusted depending on how many bands we have. And then generally speaking, most bands will rock up. Well, technically 5, but normally they'll be there 2 or 3 o'clock, and they'll have some pints and play some pool.
So I guess that means you've avoided, just naturally in the way that you kind of got these are broadly the times of the venue, you've avoided the kind of problem of curfew, I guess, because you've got it quite well planned out.
Yeah, we've managed to avoid issues really there. There's always an open line of communication if anyone needs to speak to the operations managers. We're lucky enough that we talk to our neighbours and they do communicate with us. So that's, generally speaking, has always been quite good. We're always very respectful of them. We've always had ignition in place where we stop letting people in by 11 p.m. So even at the weekends where we're open till 1 a.m., last entry is 11. So people generally speaking know that, and the shows are generally always done before then anyway. They're always finished like 10 to 11, so it's always within time.
So is 11 o'clock the kind of...
Yeah, so that's the kind of cut-off. The cut-off for being noisy.
I thought it was. Fair enough. So when it comes to a gig, what would you expect a band to bring themselves, and what would they expect to be provided by the venue?
Instruments and amps, really. So, I mean, we've got a backline. Our backline has been lovingly put together through a bunch of different people, and I think the majority of it is just like being donated over time, but it's actually pretty decent now. It's actually pretty sick. But we've got bass cab, we've got a couple of guitar cabs, we've got drum shells. We've got a bass head, so I think it's just guitar amps that we need now. But yeah, we're pretty much there. We're pretty much sorted, which is pretty decent. But yeah, bands bring their instruments.
Yeah. Obviously, you'd hope. Maybe that's not obvious. Some bands, I don't know. Was it a couple of years ago? I'm trying to remember now that you got the old sound system from Prism. Was it Prism?
Yeah, so Banquet Records, they got a new one, so they let us have their old one, which is awesome. So the sound in there is absolutely stunning now. I think as well, because obviously if you think about the size of the room in Prism, I think in comparison to the size of the room in the Flying Cox, it's a big difference.
Yeah, it is.
But it sounds amazing. And our engineers as well, they're incredible. So Rob, who is our head sound engineer, he teaches sound at the uni as well. And so everyone who kind of comes in after him, he's training them up. So the sound is just constantly impeccable, which is amazing. And then every now and then we'll have people come in who used to work there and then now generally off like doing touring bands, and they'll duck in for the odd shift here and there. And it's kind of mind-blowing how awesome it is, really.
Yeah. Because it's incredible how much good sound and engineers can make or break a venue.
Oh, so much difference.
Yeah. There's one or two venues, I'm not going to name names, but there's one or two venues in Camden, because there's lots of venues in Camden, so I'm not afraid to say that, where I always kind of go thinking, it's a great venue, but the sound's never up to much, which is a bit disappointing. But there we go. That's their problem, not yours. So how does so what, in your opinion, is the best thing that a band can do around gigs? Obviously from a venue perspective.
Promotion. So honestly, the difference that it makes if, so there's one band, we love them Bloody Kids. They're sick. Every time they do a gig, they make a stupid little video. And it's just funny, when you just say, it's just funny, it's great, but it reminds people that there's something on, but it's also entertaining to watch, and things like that. They just like, it makes all the difference. Like you can share a post until you're blue in the face, but actively engaging with the people who are going to come to your show and like making sure that they know that you care and that you notice, like that, it makes a difference. And definitely the bands, like obviously promoters in the venue, they'll promote a show as much as possible, but if the band isn't engaging, if the band isn't like cross promoting with you, their fans aren't, that there's a very high chance their fans just aren't going to know the show is happening. So the salt of a good band is one who's actually going to help you promote. Yeah.
The amount of times that I've discovered that a band are doing a gig that I could have gone to as it's happening or after it's happened.
Yeah, or afterwards, yeah.
So annoying.
If
you just put a few posts up about it, I might know. There we are. Something that I guess more and more people will know, especially people in bands nowadays, is that more and more music venues are closing down because it's getting very difficult. I can only imagine what the energy bill for the last what the energy bill has been for the last 3 years. I'm not sure I want to know. So how have you, as a venue, how have you approached that? Because obviously you're still here, which is great. So how have you approached kind of navigating the financial challenges, I guess?
Lots of coffee and another massive spreadsheet.
Love a spreadsheet.
So Matt and Ali, our owners, they're awesome, and they make these massive spreadsheets, which basically is all the information that we need to put into everything. That is all of the different costs and all the different profits and all the different revenues and all of the different things. And yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Basically, that sounds about right. I mean, I guess it's also about diversifying. Like you were saying, there's lots of different nights that you put on and lots of different styles of event as well. I guess that helps.
There's a lot that, there's a lot that happens. And there's also, I mean, having your regulars and having people that will like actively come to pretty much every show that you do is invaluable. Like that's so important. But I think this is what I said earlier about kind of like giving the next generation like the tools of how to put on shows and kind of like how to create a scene is, if you don't have that, eventually it's just going to go because everyone gets older and then we kind of stop going out as much. Basically, what I want to try and achieve is to be able to have a variety of different events that fluctuate, you know, throughout genres, but also different community vibes, and just being able to be something for everyone in the area. And then if someone likes that kind of thing and they say, hey, I'd like to kind of put those kinds of shows on, cool, that person can go and do that. I think there's, especially for me when I was young, and I don't know how much of that was because I was a woman, but that was definitely felt like I wasn't able to put on events when I was a student. I remember going up to someone and who did that job and being like, can you show me how to do this? They literally turned around. They were like, well, no, you're a woman, so obviously you're not going to be able to do this. Just don't even bother. And I was like, well, I can't swear on the podcast. Boo to you.
Boo to you. Well, here you are. So clearly it is possible.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where I think there's definitely a lot that can be done. Yeah, my words are not working. My words aren't working.
I understand what you mean. So they're working well enough. They're definitely working well. I mean, it's one of those things where for me, so I talk to bands kind of up and down the country and from other countries as well, to be fair, but you know, largely in the UK. And a lot of them say London is, to them, certainly people who don't live in London, is an impossible place to play in. Apparently Bristol's like this as well, I understand, and Brighton, in that if you're not from there, being able to play there is very, very difficult. And whenever anyone says, what would you recommend? One of my first recommendations is email the Fighting Cocks and just see. Because I
love that. That's awesome. I think this is the thing. There's a lot of people that I've spoken to and they're just kind of like, even if you don't put us on, thank you for responding. I really appreciate that. Like, I get that on the regular. But this is actually one of the reasons, because you said about Bristol and Brighton. So this is actually one of the things that I'm trying to do with this band directory, is kind of what I want to be able to do eventually is create a larger network that links all of these different types of bands together. So for example, if you have someone who is doing a London show and they're from London, but they want to do a little tour and they're going to go down to Bristol and they're going to go down to Brighton, they're going to go down to Cardiff. If you also have the bands that are also in all these different places, and you can just kind of link them all together, so they can kind of, you don't necessarily have to be a part of it, but you can give them the tools to be able to put on a tour, but not just put on a tour and not just pay a venue fee and then no one goes because no one in that area knows that band and they've spoken to the wrong person. They're just pissing money away. But yeah, if you can have a bigger network of people, and there are a lot of other really cool promoters in the scene also doing it, where they've put out maps of the area and they'll basically say, these are the promoters that you need to look for, these are the promoters that are good in these specific areas. And like, there's a lot of people that are doing similar stuff. But yeah, it's just, I think there's a very positive outlook on the grassroots scene at the moment. So as difficult as it is, and as difficult as it has been in recent years, it's been like climbing up mud for some time now. There's a lot of people who do genuinely care and who are genuinely putting the work in and the time, and yeah, we'll have massive bags around our eyes and 7 cups of coffee a day. But it's kind of working. I think it's kind of working.
I mean, if it's, you know, to be blunt to anyone listening, if it's not for the passion of people like yourself, there won't be anywhere to play.
Yeah.
And you know, there are, as just a statement of fact, there are less venues to play than there were even like 5-10 years ago. And you know, if you want there to still be venues, then.
But it's also important. It's one of those things where I think so many people get disheartened. So I think, like you said, it's difficult to kind of like break into certain areas for a lot of bands. But I mean, I've seen bands I've seen bands over the last few years who have really, really put the effort in, and you've seen them go from small little shows to be on the cover of Kerrang! And like that, we've like, even in my short time of doing this job, like I've seen that happen quite a few times. And it's one of those things where when you're out on the outside of the bubble, it seems so impossible to be involved in it. And then you actually see it from the inside, and there is a very, I don't know what the right word is. It's definitely a lot of stepping stones, but if you're putting the work in, it is achievable.
It's possible. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I completely agree. And
especially in this day and age where you can just kind of, social media has just become this, for better or for worse, insane tool that people can now use. But it means you don't have to rely on other people like to put your music out and to get up, that you can rely on yourself and you can make things work.
Yeah, you just need to put the work in. It's true. As long as a band are willing to put in the hours, put in the hard yards, I guess, of promoting themselves and working out how to present themselves on social media, especially, then it's great.
But yeah, if people are engaging when they're on stage, people love that. That's something that you get that you can't get from Spotify. And that's the main difference, like having that. And I think this is one of the beautiful things about being in the Fighting Cocks is if you're there and there is someone literally swinging from the rafters and there is sweat dripping down the walls and you're like, oh, is it leaking? No, that's sweat. And maybe not an experience that some people want to appreciate even a little bit, but for others it's such a good time. And like being able to actually go out and do that with your friends on the regular, and there are these little places like the Cocks, and there are ones like it all over the UK, albeit like a lot small, like less now, but they do still exist. And fortunately, the ones that do still exist are getting louder.
True. And then it's about in each kind of area working out where is good. Where do you want to play? I mean,
so I think previously people might kind of like be a bit more gatekeepery, but this is what I mean in terms of like the promoters that are on the scene and like networking and stuff at the moment. Like everyone is very cool. Like everyone is very happy to help one another. And I think that's awesome. Like, again, like even in a few short years, like I've seen a big change where everyone's kind of like, if we don't help each other, this is just not going to be around anymore.
Yeah.
And I will say as well, I think a lot of that has been to do with Music Venues Trust, because they've actively made a point of bringing everyone together.
Yeah, I keep seeing them more and more. Was it I don't know, was it last year? Was it somewhere like Manchester? They bought a venue so that it wouldn't close. I think I heard that.
I think they're doing some stuff with that. I don't know much about it, so I'm going to skip over that one. Oh, but in terms of bringing everyone together, I guess, so they had, they do like a day, it's called like music, so it's called like a venues day. So they'll bring a bunch of different agencies and promoters and people who run venues all together, and then we'll do workshops and have conversations. Then obviously at the end, you'll all have beers and you actually network, which is lovely. But it's actually a really nice point where you're able to meet people who you just normally only ever talk to over email, or, they'll like your stories on Instagram, but you've absolutely no idea who these people are. You've never actually had a conversation with these people. But to be able to have people from Southampton come up to me and be like, whoa, you did this gig and this is amazing, and I love the posters that you made for it. And I was like, that's pretty cool, actually. That's really nice.
And it's one of those, I guess it's one of those opportunities where you can do that rare thing where you can meet people who are doing what you do. And
it's so rare. It's
I'm
amazing.
Not alone.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a wonderful moment. There's other weird people here too. So when you're talking with bands over social media or email or however those conversations go down, do you generally find that you're chatting with kind of like, I don't know, a designated person, or is it kind of, sometimes is it a bit of a variety of people that you end up talking to?
So I'd say it's definitely a mix. And I think it's definitely the most successful when it's one designated person. So when it's a mix, we tend to find, obviously someone's going to just like, not be looking, or if you sometimes you might have one person that's in charge of the social media, but then another person's in charge of the email inbox, and the person that is in charge of the email inbox isn't looking at those emails, they're just going to miss the dates. they're just it's not going to come through any more than it already is. But yeah, I think the ones we got the best response is when you have someone who is like the designated social media email person, and they will respond and get back to you, or at the very least say, yo, I'm busy right now, but I've seen your message and I'll get back to you later on today, because then if they've seen it. Like, so especially if you're kind of trying to finalize a lineup, if you specifically want one band, but you don't know if they've seen the message, like you don't know if they're debating it or if they're just not responding to you, you're probably, if it's been like a little while, you're probably just going to move on to the next person. So if you at the very least can say to people, oh, we've seen this, we're going to discuss it, we'll let you know in XYZ. Great.
Do you find that when you're talking to, say, like multiple people in a band, you can get conflicting information as well?
It can be conflicting information, but I actually find it's more that they conflict amongst themselves. So someone will maybe interpret what you've said in one way, and then it'll get kind of so we'll basically have kind of, before a show, we'll have like an information sheet which has, general advancing all over it, but then before you even book a show, you'll kind of had the original sheet we talked about earlier, which will also have a lot of the site information, everything on it. So we have essentially your facts are there from the beginning to the confirmation, in case anyone needs that information. But if you're sending it to one specific person, unless they actually share that with the rest of the band, quite often the rest of the band just don't get that information. So that can be a bit of an issue, but it's all a learning curve.
Like, from a music production point of view, I always find it's similar, actually. It's so much easier when there's like a designated person in the band who's going to communicate with me. And, I have had different band members asking for conflicting things in a mix, which is great. And and I guess kind of filtering it through that one person, you can avoid that problem. And I guess in a similar sort of way, you get that kind of band consensus, or at least you hope it's a consensus, through the person that you're talking to, which I guess makes it much clearer for yourself. So what would you what's the worst thing that a band can do at a gig?
At the Fighting Cocks, confetti. Confetti makes the staff mad.
I can well imagine.
So we have a new rule: if you use confetti, you have to sweep up the confetti, which, to be fair, most bands will do.
I'm not sure I've ever seen confetti from any band at the Fighting Cocks. Maybe I'm just going to the wrong gig.
There's a reason. So because of the sweat and the drinks, it just kind of like becomes the floor.
Oh, grim. That's grim.
It's so gross.
Wow. I mean, no, I don't think I've ever seen confetti at the Fighting Cocks. I don't know, is that more of a punk thing?
It's been a while. I think it's been a while.
Okay. That's probably why then. That's probably why. Fair enough. I mean, I'm just trying to think. No, I've definitely never seen that. That's a new one.
Personally, I think it's fun, but
it is. I mean, yeah, it is, as long as you're not the person clearing it up.
Yeah.
Then you can get away with it. I guess my final question for you, my final formal question, and this is very much your opinion. What is the best band that you have seen at the Fighting Cocks?
Oh, see, I was going through this earlier in my brain because there's so many.
Maybe most memorable. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Oh no, that's even harder. I think so. I'm gonna for like this year, because it just narrows it down. For this year would be Snapped Ankles, who we had on recently, and that was amazing. It was just such a cool time. There were so many new faces in the venue, and there was a man there who I was standing next to, and he was like, "Oh, do you come to this bar a lot? This band are amazing." I was like, "Yeah, they're sick, right?" He's like, "I've come from Canada." I was like, "You've come from Canada?" I was like, "I've rearranged my work schedule coming to the UK specifically around this gig so that we could be in Kingston on this day to watch this band." And I was just standing there just like, what? That's insane to me. But absolutely love it, and he had a great time.
And I thought I was coming a long way from Sutton, but
yeah, literally, I was just absolutely just like flabbergasted. I was like, that is so cool. That makes me really happy.
That is a pretty cool moment. I can't deny. That's wow, nice. Natasha, it's been really great to talk with you. Thank you.
Woo!
So there we are. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. I certainly enjoyed making it. It's always good fun to do. So it just leaves me to say thank you for listening to another episode of the Music Survival Guide podcast. If you liked it, please rate and review wherever you listen. It all helps the algorithm, of course. It really, really helps people to discover what I'm doing. And please also share it with any friends or bandmates if you thought it was useful or interesting. Good chat about the local music scene is always interesting and good fun to me. Anyway, if you're thinking about recording or mixing and you want to talk about it, feel free to reach out to me via my links in the podcast description below, and I'll see you next time.